Welcome back to Rugby from the Stands. So, New Zealand beat Italy 47-17, 7 tries to 2, and Ruben Love went 6 from 7 off the tee. He made the first 3 conversions, missed the 4th after de Groot's try, and then made the last 3. But honestly, this scoreline hides a bit. At halftime, it was only 14-10, and I was genuinely a little nervous. Italy had scored from 2 moments in that first half, the early try and the penalty goal. They were hanging around, they were clean, and they were making New Zealand work. So the final score says comfortable. But the first 40 minutes was anything but. This momentum chart shows that pretty clearly. Italy scored inside 2 minutes, and they actually led twice in the first half. New Zealand did not properly get in front until around the 29th minute. There was also that 17th minute TMO moment where live, I actually thought Lamaro had a point. As an All Blacks fan, I was a bit nervous there, but once they showed the replay, I think the officials got it right. Then after halftime, the game flips quickly. It goes from 14-10 to 40-10 in about 14 minutes. Roigard scores, de Groot scores, Jordan scores twice, and suddenly the match is basically gone. And just to be fair, it was already 26-10 before Cannoni's red card. The red card made the chase much harder for Italy, but New Zealand had already started to pull away. Now, this is where the game gets interesting. Along the bottom, as usual, we have post-contact meters per ruck. I'm using per ruck because a ruck basically ends a phase, so this gives us a better feel for what each team got per phase, rather than just rewarding the team with more ball. Up the side, we have line breaks per 100 rucks, and on that basis, Italy's attack was actually quite sharp. They had 9.5 line breaks per 100 rucks. New Zealand had 7.5. Both teams were above the test match median. Post-contact meters per ruck were also identical, 3.1 each. So Italy were creating things, and that's what makes the second half interesting. They had moments where New Zealand were opened up. The question is what happened when each team got close enough to score. If you only take one chart from this entire video, honestly, it's probably this one. New Zealand had 13 visits to the Italian 22 and scored 3.6 points per visit. Italy had 7 visits and scored 2 points per visit. That is where the scoreline starts to make sense. Italy had some good rugby between the 22s, but New Zealand were much better once they got close. And the halftime split is important as well. New Zealand were at 2.8 points per visit at the halftime break. Then 4.1 in the second half. So Italy gave them similar chances, but after halftime, New Zealand started converting those chances properly. Now, what surprised me here is New Zealand did not really buy territory with the boot. Along the bottom, this is kicks per 100 rucks. So again, we're not just looking at total kicks. We're asking, when a team had the ball, how often did they choose to kick? New Zealand kicked only 11 times per 100 rucks. That is very low. Italy kicked at 25.7, which is more, but still below the median of around 30. And territory finished basically even, 49 for New Zealand and 51% for Italy. So New Zealand kept the ball in hand against a fast Italian line. That can be dangerous because if your ruck is slow or your support is poor, you get trapped. But New Zealand did not really get pinned. So the next question is, if they were not kicking their way downfield, how were they getting there? This probably answers part of it. Along the bottom is post-contact meters per carry. Up the side is the percentage of rucks recycled inside 3 seconds. Post-contact meters per carry were exactly the same, 2.4 meters per carry each. So I don't think New Zealand simply smashed Italy physically. Italy actually matched them in the contact area better than the scoreline suggests. Where New Zealand were better was ruck speed. They recycled 66% of their rucks inside 3 seconds. Italy were at 58%. And 66% means basically 2 out of every 3 rucks were quick. This was markedly slower than the game against France, and that was kudos to Italy, who were actually succeeding in slowing down the All Blacks, but still 66% against the median is still much higher. So I am kind of curious how the All Blacks might go up against a much more physically dominant, a team that has much more depth, like say South Africa or maybe England, whether they'd be able to impact the All Blacks' ruck speed rates. But kudos to Italy. They hung in there. They did manage to keep New Zealand's lightning quick ball to just 66%, which is generally what you would expect from an All Black side. Now, fast ball is one part of the breakdown. The other part is when you can steal the other team's ball. New Zealand had 66% quick ruck ball, as we just said, and they won 4 turnovers. Italy were decent, 58% quick ball and 3 turnovers. But when you are defending that much, being slightly behind at the ruck becomes quite expensive. New Zealand had just enough breakdown speed, and they also found enough steals to kill pressure when Italy were trying to build. Now, this Italy defensive slide is actually quite huge. Italy made 225 tackles. That is right at the edge of this whole test match data set. Almost nobody tackles that much. And if you were nervous at halftime like I was, you were not imagining it. Italy made 118 tackles in the first half at 89% success rate. That is a real wall. But across the full game, they only had 2 dominant tackles from 225 attempts. So the way I saw it, Italy wore down more than they collapsed. And after 118 first half tackles, honestly, who wouldn't? The second half tackle rate drops to 84%, and New Zealand's line breaks go up from 2 in the first half to 9. That is the wall starting to crack. This is why I want to give Italy proper credit. Italy had a 96.2% set-piece win rate and only conceded 6 penalties. They won every scrum and every line-out on their own ball. New Zealand were at 87.5% and conceded 7 penalties. They lost 2 line-outs as well. And that scrum penalty against Lomax is not fully captured here because this chart only looks at your own feed. So Italy won set piece, won discipline, made 225 tackles, and still lost by 30. That sounds mad. And I kind of understand the frustrations of the Italian coach when he was venting right after the game. But it does tell you just how important geography and finishing are. Italy had 80% of their possession inside their own half, and only 5% inside New Zealand's 22. That is a horrible place to live for 80 minutes. You can have a good set piece, you can be disciplined, you can make your tackles, but if most of your rugby is happening in your own half, eventually you're just surviving. And the last 10 minutes tells you New Zealand controlled the finish. 70% possession, 7 points, and Italy didn't score anything. From an All Blacks point of view, that is a good sign. The bench came on, the fresh front row came on, and the game got more one-sided rather than less. Now, to the players. Along the bottom, this is defenders beaten per carry. Up the side, meters per carry. And it is per carry because Moorby had half the minutes of some of these guys. If we only use totals, you would punish players who came off the bench or came in because of an injury. Also, before anyone says one big carry could break this, that is why the chart uses 4+ carries to qualify for this chart. Moorby is the big one here. 10.8 meters per carry on debut on his 28th birthday, after Carter went off injured. That is a pretty awesome story. Carter himself was at 9 meters per carry from his 31 minutes. So whatever happens with the All Blacks wing depth, this chart is encouraging. Roigard is way out to the right. 0.8 defenders beaten per carry. For a scrum half, that is insane. For Italy, Menoncello, wow, what a player. He was their best player on the field today. And the stats actually backs up what we saw with the eye test. And Allan quietly carried for 8.6 meters a carry as well. Okay, here we're looking at tackles per 80 minutes along the bottom and dominant tackle percentage up the side. We've normalized for 80 minutes because if someone comes off the bench for 20 minutes, it would skew the data to someone who played the full 80. Vintcent's workload is ridiculous. 50 tackles per 80 minutes, 30 actual tackles in the game, and only 1 missed. That is a massive defensive shift. I don't think I ever recall anyone hitting 30 tackles in a game. Lorenzo Canoni and Marin were high as well. But again, look at the dominant tackle side. Almost everyone is sitting near 0. So it backs up the team picture. Italy tackled all night, but they did not win enough of those collisions. For New Zealand, most of the forwards are between 9 and 15 tackles per 80. So defensively, it was a pretty quiet night by workload. This chart is penalties conceded along the bottom with fewer penalties further right and turnovers won up the side. So top right is what you want. You want players who win turnovers and who stay clean. Will Jordan winning 2 turnovers with 1 penalty is such a nice detail. On the night, he breaks the try record. He also tops the steal chart. That is not usually the first thing we talk about with Will Jordan, but those moments are incredible. And Satiti is the one that looks a bit scrappy today. 2 penalties given away, no turnovers, and he had a few messy moments with the ball as well. And then Kanoni's red card sits there as the obvious turning point, even though, again, New Zealand had already started to pull away by then. Here we have try assists per 80 along the bottom and tries per 80 up the side. But with these player charts, I want to keep saying the raw numbers as well, because per 80 can make small samples look bigger than they are. Will Jordan is exactly where you'd expect him. 3 tries, 50 test tries in 56 tests, the first All Black to 50. Man, that is ridiculous. As the commentator said, he stands alone. Moorby is the other huge story. 2 assists in 49 debut minutes, which normalizes to 3.3 assists per 80. Carter had 1 assist in 31 minutes before the injury, which normalizes to 2.6. So the wings were creating as well as finishing. And then there's Ethan de Groot, a prop, with 1 try in 49 minutes. Normalized, that becomes 1.6 tries per 80, which is fun, but obviously the raw number is the real story there. This last player chart is running threat along the bottom and try assists per 80 up the side. And the bubble size is kicking volume. Jordie Barrett is the player who really stands out here because he gives you a bit of everything. Just like last week's chart, he had 1 assist, which normalizes to 1.4 per 80, and he also gives New Zealand a proper carrying option at centre. That coast-to-coast try starting with his boot is a good example of the value he brings. Love is interesting too. He beat 1 defender from 2 carries. So I would not go crazy with the stat because that is a tiny sample, but from the eye test, he does give you that running threat at 10. McKenzie gives you running threat from fullback, and Ratima gives you some kicking control from 9. For Italy, the problem is that Marin, Garbisi, Allan and Menoncello all sit on 0 assists. They had moments as carriers, but nobody really created enough for others. That is probably the cleanest one-line difference between the 2 attacks. So here's where my head is at. Italy passed the 40-minute test. They were disciplined, their set piece was excellent, they created line breaks, and they made New Zealand work. But they failed the 80-minute test. And unfortunately for them, rugby is an 80-minute game. The tackle percentage drops, the line breaks conceded jumps from 2 to 9, and New Zealand's points per 22 visit goes from good to excellent. From an All Blacks point of view, I'd be happy with the win, happy with the finishing, and really encouraged by some of the back 3 depth and also the bench players, but I'd still be a little cautious. The set piece was not perfect. Our lineups were pretty shaky. Italy found line breaks, and against teams like South Africa or England, you probably cannot rely on them dropping off in the same way after halftime. Anyway, that's where my head's at. Did the scoreline feel fair to you? Or did Italy play better than 47-17 suggests? And for New Zealand, who stood out most? Jordan, Roigard, Moorby, Jordie, or someone else? Let me know in the comments. Please like and subscribe. And thank you so much for the support so far and for the feedback. I'm loving your comments, and apologies for not getting back sooner. Been a bit busy this past week, but I'll try to get back to all your comments as well. And thanks for some of the suggestions as well. I have noted all of them down and will be incorporating that in future videos. Thanks everyone. Love you all. I shall see you soon.